Welcome to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, where world-changing spiritual entrepreneurs come to deeply awaken the power within to bring forth their greatest purpose, to create massive awakened impact for millions of souls around the planet, while enjoying being in tune with all life and real wealth in all aspects of their lives. I'm your host, Daniel John Hanneman. And here we are again, everybody. So glad to be with you all. Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Here we go. We're rocking it, and we got to keep on rocking it in the consciousness, right? I've got another amazing guest today. Maria Vasquez. She is amazing. She's got an amazing presence. She is a very mystical, connected sort of being. We just recently connected, but she's so fun. She's so fun to connect with. I can't wait for you to just connect with her. She's going to awaken you. We're going to be talking tree auras. We're going to be talking about waking up, mystical awakenings, just overall. Now, you don't have to be able to see auras to have mystical awakenings, okay? Don't confuse the two. Okay, but we're going to show, she's going to show you, not me, but she's going to show you, how this works, how you can have that. I mean, some, we're going to get into it, but some might say the mystical awakening experiences is kind of like where it's all at, right? I mean, like, what are we here for? We're here to wake up. So I'm really looking forward to diving into it right with you all in just one moment. Want to meditate and make money? Let it be simple. Let it be easy. Let it be fun. Go to yoursacredpurpose.com and get your free Meditate, Make Money meditation today. All right. So Anna Maria, I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh my gosh, I am super excited. And I mean, rock star, hello, right? Like I hang out with rocks all the time. And I've always, right, referred to folks as rock stars when they, really achieve something. So I feel like this is the perfect fit for us to be having this conversation.
That's so cool. I always know there's a reason why we're connecting, so love it, love it, love it. So yeah, I just was so grateful meeting you recently and talking to you about your book and what you're doing and about mystical experiences. And I was like, geez, I have mystical experiences. Could be anything, right? I mean, I could look at the sky and just start weeping and how beautiful it is and feel this deep connection, awakening. And there's so many available to us, but it's true. Like if I was out there busy in my head or something, like forget it, it's not ever going to happen, right? So there's these things we're going to talk about, I'm sure, that help us to open up to these experiences that when you're in that connection, you're like, hey, everything's perfect. Why are we always complaining? Like everything's good. Right? Isn't that amazing? It's so amazing to me. So let's talk a little bit about you, though. It's good to. Usually, most of the time, I like to get to know the guests a little bit better on the show together with my listeners. So tell us a little bit about your journey and, and tell us if, have you always been doing this connection and conversing with nature stuff?
Well, when I was younger, I would say I had a pretty normal upbringing, but it was a little chaotic. And so when things got a little tense in the house or a little out of hand, I would run out, to the trees in the yard. We had these huge pine trees that I would sit underneath and kind of, like your little cave. But I would have never called myself a nature talker or an animal talker. I mean, we didn't even have those terms. I didn't know anyone who talked to animals except like the crazy cat lady down the street, right? Like, it wasn't a job option for me. And so I knew I had a profound connection with animals, but I didn't understand how the communication worked, right? Like that Mr. Ed syndrome. If I'm looking at my dog and his mouth doesn't open and he doesn't speak English, like, okay, how do I get a message from him? So fast forward, right, several decades, and I go through this major life tsunami where everything seemingly fell apart, right? The job, the relationships, the home, everything. And there I am sitting in the ashes that had been my life that looked really good on paper, right? Like I did everything I was supposed to do. And yet there I was very unhappy. I was feeling like so unfulfilled. And I felt so despondent because I had done everything I was supposed to do. I followed all the shoulds. So I made a decision. If I've got to stay, then I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to create a life that's deeper connected. And my deepest desire was to have that two-way communication with the animals. And so I didn't know how I was going to do that, right? Because I hadn't been talking to them. So I decided to take everything that I've been learning about spirituality, all of those, trying to figure out, are they just platitudes or are they real? Are they really secrets of energy and mechanics of how this stuff works? Or is it just hooey designed to make us feel better till we just finally die, right? So I thought, all right, I'm going to take it in my living laboratory. I'm going to see what happens. And I had a mentor, a teacher, and she gave me an assignment. And she said, go out and put your hands on a tree every day for 30 days. And I want you to stay out there. And I can't remember the time frame. And I thought, this is kind of silly. Even though I was a nature girl, I still felt like, I don't know. I think she's just giving me busy work until she can figure out, like, what am I going to tell this girl? So funny. I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to commit to every day, if for no other reason than to be able to say, see, I told you so. This is not real. None of this, it didn't work. It doesn't work for me. So I had a huge skeptical part of my mind, which I think is good when it's in a good balance. So I went out every day to the same tree. And the first day I went out, and I thought, if anyone happened upon me, I have no clue what I would tell them that I was doing, why I was doing this. And I talked to the tree like that too. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm touching you in the wrong place. I don't know how any of this works. But if you'll take the little bit of faith that I have that maybe this could do something, then I'm open. So every day I did it, and about 3 weeks went by and nothing happened except I stood outside talking to a tree, right? And one day, somewhere in like that 4th week, I was sitting inside my living room and I asked, I don't even remember what the question was. And I audibly heard an answer. And I was like, whoa. And then I realized that I heard it, but it felt like it came from outside. And I was really like, whoa. So I got up and walked to the window and I could see the tree. And I said, was that you? And I heard yes again. And I was like, how is that even possible? And I honestly thought, right, like, I've been through a lot. And I thought, this is it. I've lost it. I'm over the edge. Fortunately, I know a lot about mental health resources.
They were saying about those mental health resources, right?
Yeah, I knew if I had fallen off my rocker, I could get back on my rocker. That wouldn't be a problem. But I was curious, right? Here I am intrigued. What's going on with this? So I started to lean in more and ask the tree more and more questions, like, what's your name? She told me Ruby. And then as the time progressed, I would ask her things that I could verify, right? I didn't know the answer, but I could verify it. Like what kind of tree she was. At the time, I wasn't very good at, I knew she was a pine tree, but I didn't know what kind of pine tree. And when I looked it up, it turned out she was a red pine. And then I got a friend who was really good at tree identification to come out and double check it, because I thought, Ruby the red pine, that's a little too on the nose, right? Like, I don't know. The skeptic side, right? That comes up. Turns out she was a red pine. The top of her crown had been broken off, and I couldn't figure out what had happened. So I asked her, and she said, like, 3 words: big storm, broke off. And that was it. So I checked with my landlord and I had said, what happened to that one tree? And he goes, almost word for word, he's like, it was crazy. It was this big storm and the top broke off. And I was like, whoa. So I began to trust her. But that very first day, right, when she first started talking to me, my humanness, right, like I'm nothing if I'm not human, and being honest about that humanness, one of the first things I said to her was, hey, it's great that you're talking to me, but I asked to talk to animals. I don't know what to do with a talking tree. And I'm ridiculously embarrassed to admit that that was one of the first things I say when I'm having this profound mystical experience. But it was my truth, right? It was very authentic for me. And she explained, it's just a part of upping and calibrating your energetic field. The animals will come through, I promise you. And sure enough, I want to say within 8 weeks or so, I was having profound experiences with animals communicating with me. So from there, right, it just snowballed. And that, her in particular, she taught me so much, but she began to introduce me to other trees who began to teach me other things, which then resulted in me sharing it, right? Like, you can't learn these phenomenal things and not share them with other people, especially when it related to all of our expansion, right? All of our development, because it's really about that unity consciousness. There is no tree, there is no rock, right? There just is. And I am that tree, I am that rock. And when we start to remember that, we live on the planet very differently. We move through our lives very differently.
hmm So yeah, I mean, this idea of like, I am that, I am that, whatever we look at, right? I am that, I am that. Yeah, I like to sometimes have fun with my skeptic with all that. So like, come on, literally, you're that tree. You didn't literally get experience the top being knocked off. You're not literally the tree. Come on now, come on now. So flesh that one out for us some more for the inner skeptic. That's like, yeah, we kind of believe all those stuff. But wait a minute, I'm not really one, am I?
Right? Well, and that's the thing where we have to move from realization into actualization, because there's so many pieces of this that words don't do it justice. It's not
Yeah.
until you have an experience, right? Until you have that visceral point that you can feel in your body, like you said, that you connect with the sky and it brings you to tears. When
Yeah.
you have that, when you experience that, and especially for those of us who can get stuck in our heads, right? Like, we're being called to drop down into that heart space, because when we drop down into that heart space, that breath, that element of air, right, coupled with our conscious intent, it activates that heart coherence. And that's what creates the connection. From there, right, you're transported to that quantum field where you can connect to anything. It's like, the World Wide Web, but better.
Right. Yeah.
Evidence today.
Yeah. Again, all my early channeling, I say that I mention this every once in a while to everybody, but is always, whoever I was channeling, most of them anyway, the ones I was channeling at the time, they were like, yeah, it's all about the heart space. You don't actually need your brain that much. And, like the way you think anyway. So you don't really need the brain. The brain just helps you navigate the physical, but yeah, really, you don't really need it that much. And you just need to really tune into the heart space. And I'm like, like it just kind of blows your mind entirely, right? Literally, because it's like, well, how's that possible? And all I've been taught all my life is you gotta think it through. You gotta use your brain, right? It's just the opposite. It's just the opposite is what we've been taught. Like, you need the brain, and the brain knows better, right? I mean, and yet this is why we have all the suffering we have. I believe is so much of the suffering we have is the
Because
idea.
we believe our brains.
Yeah, that this thinking brain knows more than the mystical wonder and magic within, and it's just the opposite. It's the other way around, right?
Absolutely. Earlier you were saying about having, constant mystical experiences, and it doesn't really matter, whether you're doing that with angels, whether you're doing that with nature, whether you're doing that with animals. But I find in my own life, if I go too long in my day without something magical happening, I know I'm off center. I need to get out to the forest, because that's my super highway, right? That's my entrance ramp onto the big cosmic highway. And so if I'm not regularly experiencing magical things, then I know, man, I am in my head and I'm not going to get where I want to go from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this is really amazing. Getting back to your story is really amazing. Of okay, this lady's nuts. She's having me, go to these trees and talk, and like nothing's happening. And I relate to that as a trainer of, people tuning in and tuning into other people. Like, so there have been students like at first like nothing, more often, than you would think, but oh, there's nothing coming through. Nothing's happening. Why did I even sign up for this class? Like, that's what's going through their head. Often they're saying things like that. And then all of a sudden it starts coming through. They start trusting it. And they're like, oh my God, this is for real eventually, is what they realize. Because they start getting the confirmation, right? They're doing these energy scans, tuning into people. They're like, they start reflecting back. Yeah, no, that's all right. Got all that. Oh, it must be a coincidence. Yeah, right. And then like, they do the same thing you do, right? They try to talk themselves out of it, and they get to a point where you can't deny it anymore. Like, no, there's something for real. There's no way I could have known all that.
Yep.
Finally, it comes to you, right?
Yep. 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 Even now, right? I've been doing this kind of energetic work and talking to animals, talking to people's trees and rocks for, well over a decade now. And still daily, right? My partner and I will have conversations at dinner. I'll be like, you will not believe what happened, right? And even though I understand the mechanics, I know that it's possible, it still blows my mind. And it still keeps me in awe, and it keeps like almost doubling down on itself in terms of what's revealed and how just that expansion. And then right, like it's so fulfilling, because then it's great that I can talk to trees and animals and rocks and whatever, right, whatever happens along. But it's more important that all of the humans remember that they can do it too. We're all wired as humans to be able to do this. And I think that you find what's your propensity, right? Like I already had a propensity to nature and animals. So that became the portal for me. Some people it's angels, some people it's meditation, ascended masters, whatever it is, you just got to find what is it that lights you up and lean towards that. And then you can start to deepen into that unity consciousness concept.
Right, right. Like some people are into the Palladians or whatever, different energies and stuff. They're like, I just channel the Palladians all day. I'm like, I don't care that much about the Palladian energy. And like, so you're right. I mean, it might come through sometimes, but I don't really seek it out very, almost never. I mean, so so yeah, we're drawn to Jesus or whatever energy interests me, and other ones. Mary Magdalene's been big too, and different ones come to me more so, and then other things don't interest me as much. Tuning into people's psyches and their past lives, everything that fascinates me.
Yeah.
But I'm not as interested. I'm not as interested in the animals. I've had to cultivate more of that. So there is. I would like to talk to you about this. Like that's a good place my experience. Like that is the place to start for sure. Like what are you interested in tuning in to start? You can start there. It's been my experience with these things, but then I have found like there's growth if you're willing to embrace things you normally wouldn't feel natural, or you have some curiosity, but I don't want to do that, or but then there can be a big breakthrough. So like with animals is one of them for me. The more I'm willing to open up to the animal field and the animal energy, bringing that in closer, and then even communicating more, then that does something for me, right? So it's interesting how it evolves for us.
It's so fascinating. And again, it's not even like we have to do anything special. We just have to lean in, right? Like, so for someone who says, well, I haven't felt that connection, well, go out in nature and see, where are you drawn? Are you drawn to a lake? Are you drawn to a tree? Are you drawn to sit on the edge of the river? Do what lights you up, but don't say, oh, I'm going to go do this 3-mile hike, right? Like with a to-do list in mind of I'm going to go, but to just be. Because once we get out there, right, there are biological and energetic things that are happening to our bodies, to our field, and just lean into it. It's a very gentle kind of lightning that happens as you're drawn to a mystical experience in nature or with animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So if somebody wants to go out, I mean, yeah, it's more important now than ever because there's so much of the mind being overrun, right? Like, it's constantly where people are with news, most social media, everything we always talk about, right? Constantly and training the mind, and then stories. So going out in nature without your phone, maybe leave the phone behind, but possibly, or turn it off or whatever. but like leaving that behind and just getting out there, yeah, that's so liberating. And then yeah, I mean, just to, like you said, like to not to not have that agenda, I think is really interesting, because probably some people, like you said, probably would want to do that, right? Like I might be one of those people sometimes, like, okay, I'll walk for 20 minutes, then I'll sit by the pond, I'll have a mystical experience, then I'll come.
Oh,
Like for me, I can actually do that. I could actually make it work for me, but
yeah,
but
you can.
but you know,
So it's that I'm the same way too at times. But once you've worked that muscle, right, and you can pull it in on demand, that's very different. When you're first learning, I
right,
find you have to set more of a container, and it does need to be a little more open.
yeah,
And I know enough, right? If a bush starts talking to me, or an eagle or a hawk catches my eye, I'm going to pay attention. But when you're
right,
first learning, you got to just, it's baby steps, right? It's just like when we first start running, you can't hardly make it to the end of your driveway without, bending over and heaving and stuff. And then eventually you can go to the end of the block.
right. Like, yeah, like just having people just, hey, like one of the things that I've asked people to do is like, hey, just walk out your door, don't even think anything, and just let your feet walk for you, and just go wherever your feet go, like, and it is part of it. And then when we're connecting with nature, though, what are some of the, you say pay attention, like for some people are like, what am I paying attention to? What am I supposed to do? So so how can is it a letting go process that you teach, or how do you teach people to get into that deeper connection? Because they could be in nature, be like, I don't know, it's nature. All right, I don't know, feel anything. Huh.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I call it intuitive energy tracking. So you go out and you just watch. Does something catch your eye? Right? Like, to me, the way it will show up sometimes is a tree will kind of light up, right? Like, or I'll just find myself walking towards that particular tree. So at first, right, when people are trying to develop it, they may not get the lit up tree, but they may find themselves drawn to that particular tree over the other ones. Just keep saying yes to the moment, right? And then see, I call it like a cosmic scavenger hunt. You get one little clue and you follow, and you're like, okay, and then you get the next clue. So you can begin to track that. So let's say you're drawn to a particular tree, and then notice, right, what part of the tree am I drawn to? Is it the whole tree, or is it the crown, or is it the branches, or is it the trunk? Really start to pay attention, because each of those aspects have a different energy. They have a different symbolic, metaphysical meaning, even. And so all of it, you can start to piece it together, right? Like a little puzzle. Oh, I was drawn to the trunk of this tree, and that trunk of the tree has to do with strength and resiliency and the movement of the energy, right? When you think about, this is where our thinking brain can help. What does that part of the tree do right away, right? Like my biology minor comes in and it's like, oh yeah, that's the transport of nutrients, and then when you start to think about, all right, where's my flow in life? Where am I getting my nutrients? We might all of a sudden realize, like, yeah, I've been kind of depleted. It's time for me to get grounded, get rooted, and receive, that process, that energy process. So there's all sorts when we pay attention to the signs and symbols. And when we first start, we want to feel into, what does that mean to me, right? Like, we can look up, even in my book, I've got in the appendix a glossary, an index of the aspects of nature that I work with commonly and what kind of comes through with that. But it's more important because it's your subconscious mind delivering the information, right? Like, the information comes in, I'm just going to say, from the divine, and it comes in and hits your subconscious mind. Colors, images, pictures, sounds, vibrations is what you're going to receive. But then your thinking mind, when it's in balance and in on this whole thing, it will help interpret that. It'll be like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this, or that, I get this feeling, or whatever it is. But when we're not in balance, that analytical part of the mind, when the subconscious messages come in, it acts like a bouncer, and it's like, who are you? Where'd you get that? Cite your source. Show me your documentation. And then the subconscious part of the brain goes, and runs away. So we don't get that forward movement. We just stay in the quandary. But when we engage that lower mind to help us understand, intuit, interpret what that means, then we really get traction. We get some information moving there. And the more we do it, right, the better we get, the more we flex those muscles.
Yeah, because of course, there's going to be people listening being like, but I still don't get it. I don't know what it means. Like, but this is where, the way, one of the ways that I always say is just make up the meaning, just kind of make it up. What do you think? What just comes to you right away? Like, what's your first thought about it? And, just to trust that, right? So, but a lot of times people don't want to let it be that easy, but it is that easy. And then as we open up to that, then, that's kind of the portal into the deeper allness and oneness and subtle field or whatever, everything, right? So yeah.
This is new for us as humans, right? Like before we moved out of the woods, right? We had people, the medicine men and women, who listened and connected with the natural world to get the information that they needed to live. It wasn't until we moved out of the forest or the deserts or the wherever that we began to forget about this connection. So it's really a remembering that we can do this, and that, even in indigenous communities with whom I've worked very closely all my life, there's a shifting there too. Some of it was, for practicality, you had to keep things hidden because otherwise you'd get eradicated. But some of it was very much a hierarchical kind of piece where that kind of interpretation, that kind of journeying was done by the medicine men and women and by the shamans in the tribe. And now it's starting to shift where there's an understanding that if we're going to make it as humans, this go around, we have to get the information out. So even things in my own, personal shamanic practice that years ago you didn't really speak about, I've had blessings from the elders. Okay, it's time. We got to talk about it. We got to share it. The humans have to remember that we can do this, that we have this connection.
Now, what would you say? We're talking a lot about connecting and get out there, open up, communicate, getting it going where we're listening. But and you're giving some hints and clues to how you can go about doing that. One of my questions, though, is we're talking about this as a gateway into mystical awakening. And what is that exactly? Like, right? Like, what do we really tap into? It's like kind of gets down to what is this reality really, right? Because we got out of the forest, everything. We got fascinated that the mind came up with ideas. At least the mind was convinced, like the mind came up with it, I'm sure. Oh, we've developed all this stuff, right? To keep ourselves more comfortable and safe from the things out in nature. Funny, interesting enough. So this must be better, right? I mean, your brain is saying at one level, like, this must be better. This has got to be better. And then, but now we've got this like yearning we don't even know about a lot of times to connect with nature and to connect into that mystical nature. But what that, I'd be curious to have you describe what that really is. What is it? What is it? What are we connecting with really? What's happening?
Yeah, the way that, all of the ancient texts have talked about it, right? Like what it is throughout the ages. The way that I most understand it is that life force energy coming from all that is, right? The great all that is running through this planet. It's running through the trees. It's running through the rocks. It's running through the humans. And I love to play in that sweet spot where science and spirituality meet. So we know that rocks are electromagnetic beings. They can be recorded. They can measure it, that they are putting out a very specific frequency, a harmonic, we're into cymatics even at very specific intervals. They're putting them out. And so, right, like our ancestors have gathered around stone circles for eons. They knew that when you gather those stones, that they either amplify or shield you from the local energy, right? Like, or they're amplifying it to help you get up and out of the local energy so you can connect to that divine intelligence, the divine consciousness. This is where we go to have those altering experiences. And it happens because our brain, right, which is basically this transponder sitting on the top of a bunch of wires in our body, is putting out signals and bringing in signals, right? So there's some basics that are going on. And it's not just happening in our body, that's happening in trees, that's happening in rocks. Would this be a good time to talk about like the tree aura exercise? Because I think that when you realize, when you have a physical and visceral experience where you can see, oh boy, there's more going on than meets the eye, it gives your brain something to munch on. Because you're right? A lot of this is very esoteric. It feels very non-tangible. And so one of the most fun activities that I like to do with folks, and I teach it in one of my tree courses too, is the tree aura exercise. So I find that it works best if you have those L rods, right? The dowsing rods that are shaped like L's, and so what you're going to do is you're going to go out in nature. And I always ask permission first, right? Because just like if we're in a mall and we see all these other humans, you don't just automatically go up and start interacting with all of them. And you certainly ask permission first before you would engage in a conversation. And it's the same, because these are different beings. They're doing stuff or not doing stuff or whatever. So I'll go out and I'll see if I can feel into a tree that wants to work with me. So for me, that's easy. I just go where I'm led. But for anybody else, I get it. If you're learning and you're starting, then find a tree, just pick one and stand in front of it and say, I want to try this exercise. Are you interested? You're either going to feel lighter or heavier. You might feel like you're leaning forwards. You might feel like you're leaning backwards. If you're leaning forward, that's a yes. If you feel lighter, it's a yes. If you start to feel like you're going backwards, that's a no. If you feel heavier, it's a no. And I always tell people, don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you. There may be a better tree that's wanting to work with you. There's a million reasons why. Don't take it personally, right? Like just move on and find another tree. And then what I like to do is have people go put their back to the trunk of the tree, right? And you've got your L rods out, you've got them chest level, one in each hand, pointing outwards. They should be straight. And you're going to ask the tree, show me your aura. And you're slowly going to walk. And as you start to take, the steps out, as soon as the L rods cross, I want you to look up, because more than likely you're going to be right at the edge of that drip line of the tree. And that drip line, right, when we've got a tree, that's the edge of the tree, where all the branches go. And so if it rains, you would see at first a circle around that tree. That, for the basic purposes, is the auric field of the tree. But now it gets really exciting. So you're like, oh, great, thanks. So then go back in and start to talk to the tree again. I say, love it up, right? Like tell it how grateful you are that it's making oxygen, or how pretty it is, or how it smells, or whatever. And if you can't think of anything, just be in gratitude, because gratitude is the easiest gateway to any of this stuff. So just, I'm grateful I'm here. I'm grateful I'm outside. But just like a person, right? If we engage with a person, if we have high vibrations and tell them great things, their auric field expands. The same thing happens to the tree. So now you've done that for a couple seconds or whatever, go put your back up against the tree again, get your L rods, chest level, pointing straight out, and say, show me your aura. Walk forward, you're going to walk. When they cross, you're going to find that you're about 4 to 6 feet out further this time than you were the first time. And it's from that natural expansion of the tree's auric field. And when people do this for the first time, it blows their mind. It's like, how is that even possible? But it's so fun because then it makes us go, well, maybe there is more going on than meets the eye.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, the interaction with the energies and be able to have a sense of, yeah, the L rods, like you have a sense of evidence. See, well, just look what happened. Like gives that sense of evidence. Like, look, it's real. There's something real to it beyond what I just sense might be true. So I think that could be really helpful for people. Now yeah, I think there's so many things I could ask. We could talk about this a long time. I mean, when you think about all the contracted energy we're dealing with all the time with fear and everything, uh, we get, it doesn't matter, who's the president. You got a president goes out there and it's some ominous scene, or like, this is the problem, and or any politician or whatever. Everybody's like, oh, even if you agree with them, you're like, oh, yeah. Everybody's like, oh. So all the field is shrinking, right? It's all the good energy is starting to drop, right? But if you have someone come up and inspire you, right, a speaker, and they're talking about all the infinite possibilities, everybody's prospering, everybody's amazing, everybody's just, all the field is opening, everybody's feeling good, right? And then the idea all of a sudden comes into the mind, but wait a minute, maybe there's a problem here. Everything shrink down, then you find evidence, right? Look, there's a problem, I found it. Like, so we have like this energy dance, don't we, with trusting the expanded energy, trusting the deeper energy, and versus like trying to close with the mind, looking for the opportunities and the problems with that energy. And not to make it all wrong or anything either, but there's a place for everything. But well, so often we're living that space, right, where this opens you up. And I would imagine for your students, like they get a tremendous sense of awakening, and then that brings a tremendous sense of greater well-being and everything, right? I mean, the results of
Absolutely. What I always talk about is, right, like in the class, you took the class to talk to animals or trees or rocks or whichever class it is, and yet what everybody walks away with is a better understanding of the mechanics of energy and how to ride and navigate those waves, because that's exactly how it works. It's an ebb and a flow. We expand, we contract, except when it just is what it is. But then when we involve that human mind, right, it's got an opinion about it and it has stuff to say, which again, don't believe everything you think. First of all, question those things. Is that my truth? We're not to mention the fact that we're energetic sponges and we're picking up everybody's stuff. And because we have a story that matches that hit of energy we just got, we assume it's ours. So we walk around anxious and depressed and angry and scared, and it's not even ours most of the time. And it's no wonder we're feeling so drained. If we would take the time to say, who does this belong to? We could let it go and move on our way, but we don't. So we stay very distracted. We stay very contracted. We have so much evidence against ourselves. It's amazing we're functional.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But totally, I remember one time, like, because I go for a walk every day, but I don't have like the woods right next door to me, right? I just get outside, and then we have like little pond, really, like they're ponds with fountains and stuff like that. So it's nice, it's pretty, but it's not like deep in the woods. But I have had an experience before of just being under two huge, I mean, it's like, it sounds so simple, but it's like this what we're talking about here, being under two trees and just feeling so supported by them, being together with my family, and just having a transcendent experience of oneness and peace, and just like, oh my God, I'm just sitting under two trees. Like, that's all it is. And that my field is open and interacting with the trees, because I was just in an open space. I wasn't trying to, but it was just there. And then just like how amazing that is, and that we have no clue, like the power of getting out in nature. We've forgotten all about it, a lot of us.
We absolutely have. And that piece too, right? Like you said, it's so simple. I was just under two trees. But when we look at the mechanics of energy behind it, right? Like each tree is this antenna, flowing this life force energy. And then we talked about the auric field, right? So you're sitting within the auric field of the tree, depending on the positions of the trees, right? Their auric fields are overlapping, and it creates, let's pull ourselves up and look down, right? Like if we were on Brother Hawk's back, we look down and you see those fields overlapping. You're going to start to see sacred geometry. You're going to see that Vesica Pisces, that point of creation right there. You have an opportunity to access that, right? And you did by having this amazing connected day with your family, whatever it is. But we can use that, in our own spiritual practice in terms of what are we intending, what are our intentions, and what are we looking to call into our experience. And then, let's look at one of the sacred texts, wherever two or more are gathered. They didn't mean just two or more people. They left out the rocks, the trees, and the animals, or it was edited out at some version. So we forget that first of all, we're not supposed to do this alone. And when we come together and we can amplify that energy, that makes a huge difference. And it's like an energetic supplement that we didn't even know we needed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, completely. Like all of a sudden we feel sane again. And it's like, oh, I guess this is a good thing. So you talked about early on how you developed this two-way communication with nature. So tell us more about that, because some people may be like, well, I might be able to get clues and open up and get all this good energy going. But is it really possible for us all to communicate to have I know the answer, but I'm asking you so you can share your wisdom. Like, is it all possible for us to have this, like what you call two-way dialogue with nature?
Absolutely, right? That's the core of everything that I teach, what the whole book is about, all of those pieces. And it is about, everybody teaches it a little bit differently, right? And for me, there's a mind management aspect, right? My thinking brain has to have something to munch on while I'm trying to open up to these other experiences. Otherwise, it's like a naughty puppy. It's just going to get in the way. It's going to pee on the floor. It's going to chew up my shoe. It's gonna, all that stuff. So I like to give, I have people start by learning about symbology, right? Like, what's the energy of an oak tree versus a pine tree versus, a mangrove tree or something. I mean, each trees in general have overarching kind of generic energies, right? About resilience, adaptability. They're like these sentinels, right? And that antenna. And so there's some generic pieces and about being deeply grounded and rooted in all of those aspects. But then when you look at particular trees, right, like a birch tree it connects with water and dreams and even vision quests. And then you've got an aspen tree, which is about transformation, or a pine tree, which a lot of them have to do with healing. But even each different kind of pine tree has a different energy. So you begin to learn, right? When I was first understanding this, I would walk around with all my books, right? Like my Ted Andrews book. And I actually had to create some of my own tree ones because they just weren't out there. And like I said, I included it in the appendix so that you could look tree and see what does that mean. Same thing with some rocks. But at the beginning, right, like I would just use that resource book all the time until I started being able to feel in again, what's my own interpretation of that. So now I have my own interpretation of these when I'm in a reading with someone. And that's what people want to do. They just want to start to notice what are the aspects of nature. And you can just do a Google search, metaphysical meaning of, lake, river, mountain, tree, and then specific trees. So you do that and you begin to get in tune with that. Just like anything, once you get to understand it and how it works, it's like a second language. All of a sudden you understand what's coming through. So that's how I'm able to, read for somebody. They tell me, oh, I saw a hawk, and I can feel into what hawk means about getting a different perspective. And then I can feel into what's coming through for this person and how it specifically pertains to them. right? About getting out of their head so that they can connect to that divine mind to get a different perspective. Sometimes as humans, we're too close, we're too myopic. We can't see the higher perspective in what's going on. So,
Yeah, and there's the two-way dialogue ultimately that even you listening is huge, but then is there's an exchange going on, like we're adding to the field, which brings more vibrancy to even the creatures and the beings in nature, right? So it's really it's really huge. And we're missing out. And I've said for a long time, and I just need to practice what I preach more. Like the more we spend time communing in nature, like so many problems will start to diminish if everybody spent more time doing it. Like, okay, the world's going to end. We're killing the environment. Well, there's going to be less of that going on if people are spending a lot of time outside. Just naturally, you're going to start making some choices and things. So I really think it's huge. I always said, like, wherever you are on climate change and all these different things, it's just like, listen, just start hanging out in nature, start paying attention and see what's going on, and kind of follow your spirit from there. And we don't have to be so concerned about arguing about these specific points. Oh, is it this, is it that? I think we would do better to not rely on that as much as going directly to the source, and that includes dialoguing with nature.
well, and what's funny is in today's climate, especially political climate, people are just parroting back things they heard someplace else. It's not even necessarily their truth or their belief. They're just repeating something that hit a chord for them. When we
Right.
go out in nature, we are able to better discern, right? And so I'm talking about either walking in quiet without doing your laundry list of things, or sitting in stillness, looking around. We're able to better discern which voice is our authentic voice versus all those other voices that are saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. And hint, it's never one of the voices saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. And so especially when we're dealing with things like anxiety, depression, when we are in self-doubt and not confident, get out in nature. It's the quickest access back to yourself. And it's not all energetic woo-woo, right? Like the biological aspects of those negative ions that are being released from the earth all the time is helping our body at a cellular level remember, and an energetic level, but remember balance and help to come back into some balance. Even things like reducing inflammation and things like that gum up the works. So there are things. So even if you're like, okay, I'm gonna try, but my skeptical mind, at least you can say, at least I know I received those biological pieces, even if you feel like nothing happened. And remember, for me, 3 weeks went by and nothing happened, right? I have a similar story where I went on a vision quest not long after that story. And I come to the end of it and all I am is tired and hungry, and I didn't have any visions. None of the trees talked to me, like nothing. It appeared that nothing happened. But understanding energy better now, and then also, right, the hindsight of looking back and seeing what began to unfold over the next 2 months, something was happening during that vision quest. I just wasn't aware of it, right? I didn't have those muscles built. And still, right, we have a natural intuitive development cycle, and it's not linear. It's not like a light switch, right, on and off. It's circular. There's a cycle, and part of the cycle feels like radio silence sometimes. So that first started happening to me, oh my gosh, right, that knocks you off your center. And now when I'm going through those up levels, I understand, right? Like even snake loses its vision when it's got to shed its skin. So there's those couple days where it has to use different senses, and we're called to do the same thing. When we feel like, oh no, I broke it, it doesn't work anymore. That's our old path, oh crap, something's wrong here, instead of, oh wow, something amazing is about to happen. And if we can hold that vibration, with just a little bit of faith, right? Then
Right.
we can
Right.
expand to the next level.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, everybody's gonna have a moment at least, even the most intuitive of us probably. Like, hey, geez, I'm not really getting anything. Like I just had a friend who's going through a lot of stuff, and she's like, well, what are you getting? What are you getting? I'm like, right now, I'm pretty emotional because I'm really concerned about you. So in my case right now, I don't feel trustworthy in my guidance in this moment. Like I need to get some space to be able to tune in without all the emotion. Then I'll be able to let you know if I'm what I might be getting. So like, yeah, even for someone like me, it's this is like what I'm known for. It's like there can be moments where, you know, and then we judge ourselves for it is what I find. Like for me, I know that's true. Like, man, there's times I've been so connected, everything's so magical, and then man, I must have shut it down. And we don't honor that there are these cycles. We just beat up on ourselves. We're like, what's wrong with me? I'm not connected anymore. It's so crazy. It's like, no, it's okay. I mean, there's like the season sort of thing, right? Like sometimes it's winter, sometimes it's spring and summer and fall, and it's okay. Chill out. It's all right,
Yeah, we don't do well with change as humans, which is funny because this whole planet, this whole experience is about change. The only constant we have is change. And yet we don't deal well with that as humans.
Right. Right. Let's keep everything the same. Keep me comfy. So now one last question, and we're going to talk about you've got some free gifts and you've got your book too. I'd like to tell them about. So the other thing is, yeah, I'm sure there are some people that live like in a concrete jungle, as we say, right, in the city. They're like, yeah, at the most, there's a little bit of strip of grass, maybe somewhere, a few blocks away or several blocks away. They don't feel like they can get to nature very easily. Maybe it's really hard. What do you say to those people that want to get that access, but it seems like there's almost no nature around?
Well, one of the things that I found is folks who are in those experiences, when I've read for them, is their higher selves telling them, I'm working to get you to work more energetically, right? Like, because every energy, your brain can't tell the difference between you standing in front of a tree or imagining yourself standing in front of a tree. And there have been hard studies to prove this, and how working through, the visual aspects of things, visualizing things can absolutely shift things in the physical. So what I find when people find themselves in those city or those kinds of situations where you don't have access for whatever reason, you're being asked to work more energetically. So, hey, pull up a video of forest scenes or lake scenes or a picture, or imagine a time that you were out in the forest or, in a field or on the river or whatever it is that's coming to mind that's moving you, or your favorite tree or animal or whatever it may be, and start to connect that way. And you can ask questions, right? Like if you're in a meditation, you gotten into that heart space through the breath and your conscious intent, and then you can feel into, I'm connecting with that tree or I'm connecting with that mountain, and you can ask questions of, I need to know, or what would help me with what's going on right now. And then you sit and you wait for an answer. And sometimes it will come through immediately, right? You want to pay attention. You almost want to dissect. What am I seeing in the physical? What am I seeing in my mind's eye? Am I hearing something in the physical or in my mind's ear? Is there something I'm feeling, an emotion, a physical sensation that I'm experiencing? So we can ask those different things. Is there a knowingness that's just dropping in? I didn't hear something, but I just had a knowingness come in. That can be one of the hardest ones, right? Because we didn't see it and we didn't hear it. But if you think about it, right, like it's impossible to just get nothing, right? Like our mind doesn't work that way. It's always got something going on. So we just have to start to tune in. Where is it going right now? And sometimes, like I said, it'll come through right away. Sometimes you got to give it 3 hours, 3 days, right? And it depends how charged the situation is. Like if I got a big charge on something because I'm nervous, like, oh my gosh, it's a huge decision, there's going to be more of an emotional charge. It's just like you were saying, sometimes working with friends, because there's more of an emotional charge, right? Like it means, oh my gosh, it's my best friend, and if I don't get the information, blah blah blah. I don't have that with my clients, right? I don't have that kind of attachment. I want the best thing to come through, but there's not all that other emotional baggage and emotional charges on it. That's why the other thing, right? Like reading for other people is the easiest and quickest way to hone your abilities, because you second guess yourself, right? If I try and read for my own trees or my own animals, I've got history and I've got all of this evidence against myself, right? Like, oh, I'm just making that up. And I can dismiss it so much easier. So, right, like when I'm teaching that, I have people read for each other, because you're just going to end up playing psychic guessing games by yourself, and you're not going to have validation and things, right? Like at least when I was talking with the tree, I could get information and then go validate it, go verify, is this real, is this not? So we have to have a way to be able to validate that information that's coming through. So
yeah,
and we have to do it, right? Like we have to take the time to make that connection.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, it's a lot easier. I always tell people with the training I do with the scanning, it's like it's going to be a lot easier to tune into other people than your own field. It always is, almost without exception. So, yeah, you definitely want to have people tuning in for you, because no matter how, even for me, like, still good to get other people's perspectives, because I'm really good at tuning in for myself, and yet still really good for me to get tuned in from other people, because you're always going to miss something. You're always going to have your blind spot. So I totally agree with that. Yeah. So let's as we're wrapping up the show, I know you have your book. I love you to share about, and then you have this free gift, the top 5 ways to connect with animals in nature. So to really give people even more tips, more in-depth information. So can you tell them about that?
Yeah, if you're resonating with what we're talking about, that free gift is a logical next step, because you get a PDF and you get a recording where I talk about my top 5 favorite ways to connect with animals in nature. And I explain it. I explain the metaphysics. I explain the science behind it when we've got the backing for that. And I also share different tips, techniques, and resources that I use to make these connections, and that, the folks that I teach in my classes, that they've used, that they've found effective. So it's great. It will give you some tangible things to go do and experience. So that free gift, I love that. And it also adds you to my mailing list, so you can keep up with these kinds of conversations. And if I have any new offerings or any opportunities for you to go deeper and connect with the animals in nature.
Yeah, just to get it into Anna Maria's field, and all her fun and all her wisdom and all her awesomeness. So we're going to have the link then in the show notes for you, or you can also just, hey, if you just look her up online, right? These days it's so easy. Just look her up online, and I'm sure you'll find that gift probably anyway. But you can definitely find it in our show notes, or you can go to yoursacredpurpose.com/blog. If you're having a hard time finding it in the show notes, you could look there too for this episode. Okay, so the other thing is, you do have there's a book you have with people that talk about all the different experiences, which is also very educational. Want to tell them about your book?
Yeah, so the book is called Nature, Divine Experiences with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscapes. And it's one book in a series of books, again, explaining these different paths, these different ways to have these mystical experiences, right? You've got Stephen Farmer with animals, you've got Marilyn Aloria with guides, Trisha McCannon with angels, there's guides, ancestors, sound, meditation. It's been a phenomenal process, right, of making the spiritual more mainstream. And So in the book, it's broken up into 3 different sections. The first section, I talk about the mechanics of the energetics. How does the mystical show up in trees, in rocks, in plants, in landscapes? So I talk about that. I give your brain the understanding, right? Something to munch on. Then the second part of the book, there's 30 stories, true stories of different people who had these real life experiences of the mystical in nature. And what I find is that begins to create the possibility for people like, oh, or I did have an experience like that, or I could. It's like the 4-minute mile, right? Before someone ran it, no one did it. Then once they did it, now that's, it's more of a standard. So I have found, and the feedback that I've gotten from folks is as they get through that first part, and especially as they get into the stories, they start having experiences. And even people who I wouldn't have expected, right? Like old high school friends are like, oh my gosh, you have a book, let me read it. They have no clue what they're getting into, right? And all of a sudden they're like, you're not gonna believe this. I talked to a rock today.
Hilarious.
And the third section is really about deepening your connection. So maybe you're getting the hint that you could do that. I take you through different experiences, practical ways to have these experiences. The tree aura is included in that. There's also things like working with the medicine wheel, which is one of my personal spiritual practices, because I am being reminded of the unity consciousness in that sacred stone circle. And there, like I said, there's at the end an appendix that takes you through some of the common plants, trees, rocks, landscapes that I work with on a regular basis and their metaphysical properties, so that you can start to see, right? Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what a marble rock means or a granite stone or whatever. So it gives you an opportunity to really take what you're reading and apply it.
Yes. Awesome. All right. That sounds so awesome. Check out her book with all the amazing authors that are in it as well. And we have got towards the end of our show. We are at the place where I like to do some quick tuning in to our guests. Just whatever kind of comes through. Sometimes it's confirmations on some things you've got cooking that I pick up on. I'm like, yeah, this is good, that's good. So, or whatever comes through as I tune into your energy and just what the guides have to share. Are you ready to receive a couple downloads, Anna Maria?
Yeah, this is fun. I usually have to drive, right? So I get to sit in the passenger seat. This is great.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and start tuning in. One moment. So, all right, yeah. So I just get this mystical wide wonder are the words that come through. They just show the expansiveness of the energy that you're connected to, that there's even more potential for you to harness and sit in that space where you're just so connected, and that everything, you can get into that held space, in the field and here on the planet. So that connection with the earth and the held field in spirit is really strong in you and brings people into that deeper wide awakening. So just continuing to work with the planet even more, and then just intending that people are having more connection with nature, nurturing of nature, and more deeper, wide open awakening. All these kind of guidance points are coming through on that. Let's see what else. Oh, wow. Okay, what's that one? Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so something about the ET energies. Let's see what they want to say with that. I want to find out more about that. I'm just getting a bunch of things popping in. Yeah, I guess one of the things is just you got that super psychic antenna, and so they just are letting you know again that you have a very quick and twitchy energy. I call it almost like a twitchy energy or something. That's my word for it. But that there's signals coming in all over the place. And so the more you playful with it, the more you flow with it even quicker. Like there's even more magic I'm hearing. So yeah, so there's these collective fields. There's so much you're connected to, but there's a sense of a collective field. Let me see what that is. Let's see if they've got any more specifics for that for now. Yeah, I'm not getting it right off that. If I slow down and take more time, we can get into it. But and I'm just hearing about crystal grids and things like that. That's come through on the show a lot for different people. We want to be working with crystal grids more. So if you're not working with one, apparently that seems to be a recommendation as well. Let's see if we got one more download. Yeah, something about the energy on the back of your field. So they're showing me your heart. So but there's sorrow and there's heaviness on your back from the past. And so that wants to be resolved. Let's see how it wants to be resolved. They've got to give something with that. Doe, a deer. Okay, so yeah, just the idea of like I get this idea of like a doe and a crosshairs or something, or getting run over by a car or something. When there's no judgment, you're dead, it's done. And so there's something about that of just like, okay, that stuff happened, those things happened in my life. The deer's dead, the doe's dead, it doesn't matter. And again, none of this logically makes sense to people's brains, but I know you know better. But like, it's just like, okay, we can just let that go, So, because yeah, and just a sense of responsibility. Also, they're talking about. So, just okay, that I'm hearing a lot about like letting more assistance and like on a light level, and also here on Earth you're too quick to say like, no, don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. So so you're getting better with it, I'm sure, but like get better at saying like, oh yes, please, like knowing that there's not an attachment, like there's not like a dagger behind it, like, but so to trust more when people want to help, that of course the right people, but like when people come in to help, to be like, yes, go ahead, yes, please do that for me, that'd be great, thank you so much. Like being even more receptive, because you would tend to shut off the receiving out of potential perceived first of all, you don't want to bother people, but also perceived threats. It can be also another part of it. So this is big for you on many levels. So anyway, those are a few things coming through. Once I get going, like someone that's really open, like I could really, we could get into millions of things all at once. So, but Anna Maria, any quick thoughts or reflections of what came through?
Yeah, I thought that was super great. Like I said, it's wonderful to be on the receiving end of that. I really resonated with so many aspects, especially the playfulness, right? Like I can get serious about it, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be able to understand this so I can teach it, so I can, so we can have this transformation on the planet. You can get serious. And so that reminder to play, right? Like that's again, when we walk our own talk, that's one of the biggest things I tell people: go play, lighten up, right? Don't be so serious about this. That part with the deer, right? That any kind of death of anything has to do with the transition of energy, right? And so with deer, it's the transition, and it has to do with alluring to new adventures, right? So that transition of following that gentle luring to new adventures, that transition and that return to traditional ways, all of that, right? When we start to wrap the whole message together, it really resonates, and I can feel that luring, that gentle luring to these next adventures, right? And it goes back into what you were also saying, where there's even more waiting, more expansion. So it gets me very giddy. So I just felt like you were real spot on, especially as when you were talking about the asking for help. My mantra lately has been, just because I can do it doesn't mean I have to do it. Right. Because I have a history of just get her done, just do it. And, now I've got like assistants and a team of people who can take it. And I just am like, oh, I'll just do it. Right. And so my mom is, just because I can doesn't mean I should or I have to. So that was really great. Thank you very much for sharing your gift.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful to share it with you today. And thank you for everything. And just so people know, if you want to check me out, go to yoursacredpurpose.com. So that you can stay notified about all the next episodes. If you enjoyed this one, you can go there and you sign up for the my Meditate and Make Money meditation that was mentioned earlier in the show. People swear by it. Love that meditation. Opens you up, gets you guidance for the day and how to be a magnet and open up those magnetic energies inside you for money. So check that out at yoursacredpurpose.com. And hey, maybe you could qualify for an energy scan with me. Are you ready to rock or what? You'll see the application when you go to the website. Okay, so Ana Maria, any last words you would like to share with everybody?
I would just say go outside. Right? Just go outside and be led. I'm so grateful that you have created this platform for us to have these soulful conversations. It means so much, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ana Maria. So grateful to have you here. It was really awesome and really appreciated everything you shared with us today. And can't wait to learn more. So, okay, everybody, thank you for tuning in today. Keep on tuning in, and we'll keep on rocking it here at Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Till next time, everyone. Goodbye for now.
Listening to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Stay tuned for our next upcoming new episodes each Wednesday and Saturday. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to help us to serve you best. As a reminder, you can get your free Meditate and Make Money meditation at www.yoursacredpurpose.com to rock your sacred purpose. Goodbye for now, everybody.